Hello friends! So, just gonna wait a couple of seconds to see if anyone is online and interested in anything I have to say today. The answer is probably not, but you never know. Although what I could do is bring up the video on my other machine down here and then I can see what I'm doing. And also have some idea of what the delay is. Cool, a couple of people on. Right, so a couple of weeks ago I did a video where I was putting makeup on and talking about random, slightly harrowing, but in hindsight kind of funny and also stuff that happened when I was a kid. And someone in the comments said, "Ah yes, more story time with Monica, stories of fun and light and frolics. Monica's World of Happy Fun." And I do actually have quite a lot of very funny stories about my life because I have done quite a lot of things, and I thought it might be fun to share anecdotes on the internet with my lovely friends because I'm apparently that narcissistic. Also, I have the gayest wristwatch band. I may end up being interrupted because I am technically at work and occasionally get messages going off on Teams. So if anyone from work actually wants to talk to me, I'm going to have to just cut this short and try and pick up where I left off later. So I have a story today about, well, it's about having privacy as a teenager. So my mum was presumably still is severely mentally ill, and this led to some rather dark chapters of my childhood. However, when I was about 12 years old, Mum got involved with a chap called Tom, who she worked with, and they eventually ended up getting married. They later divorced, but it's not really, I don't really know what happened there because by that point I'd well moved out and didn't give a shit anymore. Tom was a pretty decent bloke. His previous wife had died. He had 2 children with her and she'd had like 4 from a previous marriage. The oldest of whom was now in their 50s and the youngest of whom was like 20. So Tom, Mum's new husband, he was a decent guy, an older gent. He was a Geordie, and I didn't hate him. He respected my boundaries, which is kind of important for like a preteen girl. I don't think he liked me very much, but he didn't take it out on me or anything. He was a decent guy. I liked him. So I am, time has passed, I'm about 13 or 14, and me, Mum and Tom are living in this sort of split level flat in a house in London. It's actually a really nice place. And my mum is entirely under-equipped to deal with a slightly tearaway teenager. I say slightly tearaway, I was kind of a terror. I had... That's the doorbell. Hold that thought. Fuck is this? Random package from Switzerland. What the fuck have I bought from Switzerland. Anyway. Oh! Apparently I bought another Google Nest speaker. That's quite handy. Right. Although why it came from Switzerland, I've got no idea. So, young Monica, a bit socially underdeveloped for various reasons, turned into a bit of a tearaway teenager, as one might expect. Unlike a lot of preteen girls, I had kept a diary and all sorts of other things. At some point when I was 13 or 14, my mother started reading my diary. I presume she'd actually been doing it for years before then, but bitch had no sense of boundaries, so... I discovered that she'd been reading my diary when she decided to have a row with me about it, because I'd written something in it that she didn't agree with. And she was basically gaslighting me about how she was a much better parent than I'd made out, and I'm like, sure, okay, that's not on. Tom, Mum's husband, my stepdad, stayed quiet through this entire row I had with my mother, and she eventually turns to him and says, "Oh, what do you think, Tom? What, do you think this is acceptable?" And Tom's like, "I told you not to read her diary. That's her place where she gets to work out her feelings and talk about things that she wants to talk to, and it's not meant to be for you to read. And I told you, if you read it, you're going to read something you don't like and get upset." And I'm like, thank you, Tom. From that point, I stopped writing in my diary. I actually dug out all of my old writing and burned it. And I stopped spending as much time in the house because I just didn't want to be around her. She had no fucking boundaries, no sense of allowing me any kind of autonomy. I think she was trying to make up for the previous 10 years of complete hands-off neglect by smothering me, which is, like, I can see the thought process there. So anyway, I stopped spending as much time in the house. Luckily, this was about the age that I discovered live music, alcohol, and people that I thought were fun. I don't think any of them are watching this video. I still have a couple of them on Facebook, but yeah, they didn't know I was like 14 at the time, so it's not really their fault. So my mum, upon me deciding that I was going to spend as little time in the house as possible, became convinced that I was on drugs. Now, the only thing I really did was smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol, which is pretty normal for a 13, 14-year-old in, Council City, South London, but she wasn't having any of it, so she was convinced I was on drugs, and she was threatening to send me to, like, military school. And I'm like, does that even exist in the UK? I don't think you've thought this through. Not a response she appreciated. Apparently I was undisciplined and ungrateful, which, I mean, yes, I was. So yeah, she is convinced I'm on drugs. She's convinced I'm out getting stoned. Like, no, I was having, like, gin and tonics and watching live music in venues in Camden. It was fucking great. So she then gets upset with me because I've burned my diary and have stopped writing it. She's like, "How am I supposed to know if you're in trouble if I can't go through your private thoughts?" I'm like, maybe you're just gonna have to parent me. I don't know. I get completely sick of her constant interrogation of me about my supposed drug-taking habits. And I decide to play a bit of a prank on her. I found a little tin, one of those proper, like, grubby looking old mint tins that are a bit rusty and a bit dodgy looking. And I fill it with something. and I hide it really, really well in my bedroom. Like it's somewhere no one would ever think to look. By which I mean it's a perfect place for a teenage girl to hide things that she didn't want her parents to find, and probably the first place any parent would look. So I lay this trap, and then I go out for 4 days. Like, bye losers. I go out for about 4 days, and eventually roll back into the house about 6 p.m. on a Thursday evening. Because, you know, that was the kind of life that I led. And I walk in and I'm like, hey, I'm home, and I'm pretty upbeat. I've had a really good couple of days. And I walk upstairs and my mother is sat on the sofa. She is stony faced. And the atmosphere is weird. Tom is sat in the corner looking anywhere but at me or my mother. I'm like, hi? What's up? What's going on? My mother's like, I'm really, really angry with you. How dare you? What the fuck have I done? Like, she wasn't even mad at me for just fucking off for 4 days. Because, you know, that would have been the obvious thing. Like, I can't believe you've done this to me. You're so embarrassing. Why? I genuinely don't know what you're talking about. Help me out here. Come on. And she blusters and blathers and sort of stumbles over her words for a while, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Tell me what the problem is, please, because this is just getting weird and uncomfortable. And she goes, I took it to the fucking police station. I'm like, took what? Your weed. Like, okay. And at this point, Tom is sitting in the sofa across the room, and he just bursts out laughing. He cannot control himself any longer. He is sat there pissing himself. And I'm like, okay, so what happened at the police station? And she says, well, I took it down there and I said, I think my daughter's on drugs and I found this in her bedroom, and can you test it for me? Because I really think she's on drugs, and if she's got drugs in the house, can you arrest her and take her away? And the police are like, yeah, all right, love. So they open up this tin and they look at it and they're like, well, your daughter's definitely on something. My mum's like, oh God, what is it? She's into the real hard stuff, isn't she? They're like, Assam, by the looks of it. I'd filled the tin with loose tea leaves. They're like, we can make you brew if you want. Looks like quite nice tea. At which point my mother storms out of the police station, red-faced, and Tom follows her. Apparently he sort of told this part of the story because she was too upset to speak. She was like, yes, your mother was very embarrassed, Monica. And I'm like, oh, cool. At which point I just start falling over laughing. And my mother has absolutely no idea why myself and Tom are finding this so fucking hilarious. And I think even if you asked her now, she would probably still not see the funny side of it. And I managed to stop laughing for long enough to say, well, this is why you shouldn't be going through my things. She went, well, that's not good enough. I'm your mother. I have a right to. And I'm like, no, I think I have a right to some amount of privacy. And if you're going to overreact like this to everything, then and you wonder why I never tell you anything. And Tom's like, I feel weird about agreeing with the tearaway 14-year-old here, but she's right. Except in a Geordie accent. I can't do a Geordie accent. I'm like, thanks, Tom. So, yeah, my mother does not talk to me for about 2 weeks after this. And it was the most peaceful 2 weeks of my life. It was great. And I still sometimes think about that and laugh because she was so indignant, so upset that she'd gone all the way down to the police station and embarrassed herself. So, the kicker is, I was actually smoking weed at the time. I didn't hide it in my bedroom. So if I've got any parents of young teenagers watching this, the place I found to hide my contraband in my parents' house was, we had this pedestal sink in the bathroom, and it had an open back where the plumbing went up, which was a great cavity for stashing things you didn't want your parents to find, because who the fuck is going to look behind the sink unless the taps break? So yes, that is where I stashed my contraband, and she never found it because she's just not that inventive. So yes, if you are worried your kids are on drugs, don't go through the super obvious hiding places in their bedroom. Look behind the plumbing or in places you would not expect your teenager to pay attention to. This is my educational moment for you parents out there. So yes, that was my fun story for a, what the fuck even day is it today? Tuesday lunchtime fun stories of teenage Monica being a bit of a mischief. Yes, I do take requests for other stories. Give me a subject or an age. Age might be difficult because I don't really deal with linear time. Or something you've heard me talk about in passing. Just send me a message and I might do another stupid anecdotes with Monica today or tomorrow or never, because I have the attention span of a hyperactive child, because I kind of am. Can stop waffling now. Yes, Rick. That's the good shit. Under the dog basket, on top of the kitchen cupboards, if your parents are shorter than you, behind the sink, if you've got one of those panels on the bathtub that comes off and there's like a cavity down there, another great place to stash things. The fast freeze compartment in the top of a freezer, which normally just has ice cubes in it and just like frost at the back that no one ever defrosts. Also great for perishables. So that's me. Bye everybody.